My Vote Counts applauds the Electoral Commission on publishing political parties' funding disclosures for the first 3 months of the year. The disclosed donations amount to just below 6 million rand. And according to those records, the ANC received 1.5 million in donation from the Ikowitz Family Foundation. Its chair is Ivo Ichikowitz and is an arms dealer who has historically used money to build relationships with power brokers. Now, the IEC is going to be withholding public funds from the African Independence Congress, the National Freedom Party and Congress of the People because they have not submitted financial statements as required by the Act. Let's now speak to Robyn Pasensie, who's a party funding researcher at My Vote Counts. Robyn, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. How important is party funding disclosure for the country as well as for the voter?
First of all, good morning and thank you for having me on the show. I think your introduction actually highlights the answer to that quite well. So you mentioned very rightly that there was a donation to the ANC by the Ikowitz Family Foundation. And the chair of that organization is Ivo Ichikowitz, who's also head of the Paramount Group that manufactures arms. And for example, he was quite closely linked to the Zuma administration. And there were a lot of allegations around how close he was then and is now to the top brass of the ANC. And there's a lot of questions around whether he should in fact be classed as an arms dealer. Now, when we see this kind of donation of 1.5 million rand from his foundation, we should ask ourselves, well, what is this actually getting in the party? Is this just a above board, I love this party, I love democracy kind of donation? Or does this get you something from the governing party? And that's really why it's important to know. We should have the right to interrogate whether these donations are in fact above board or if they are exerting some kind of influence on our politicians.
And I wonder if that's a transparent piece of information that parties are actually willing to share, Robyn, because oftentimes when we hear or see of party donations, it's often no, it's just a donation. This is nothing more than just assisting with either campaign costs, etc. But is there transparency, enough transparency from political parties, or should the voter even expect it from the parties involved?
I mean, I think, yes, the voter should expect it. And no, there is not enough transparency. I think we shouldn't forget that without the party funding law, we wouldn't have seen this kind of donation. So this is important. We should celebrate that. We should recognize that. However, it's simply not enough. All we see, for example, each quarter when these disclosures come out, are a very small part of the private funding that a political party gets. For example, we had the EFF not too long ago have a fundraising dinner where lots of money was being forked out for tickets. You had the ANC having a similar kind of fundraising dinner. So, for example, those things are not counted under the party funding law. So you have to ask yourself, well, who's paying that money? Why are they paying that money? Where is it going to? It's most definitely not tracked by this law that we are talking about today. So yes, definitely more transparency can be given and is needed.
Also, when we look at the donation, Robyn, I mean, it's very difficult to ignore the amounts. And these are some of the amounts that we've seen. Just for example, if I look at Action SA's donation received from 3 different donors so far, Dr. Bibi Mabizela donating 105,000 rands, Chris du Toit donating 125,000, but Martin Marshall donating 3.5 million rand. And I just wonder if there's also interest and significance that we should point out into the amounts as well, not just who is donating and where they're from, but how much exactly is being donated.
And I think that's absolutely right. So what we would like is to see an interrogation of all disclosure. So what is the amount, as you've rightly mentioned, and who it is. So if we take the example of Martin Marshall, he has donated to both Action SA and the DA. As the IEC noted in its statement when they released the disclosures, Martin Marshall has donated about 11 million rand just to Action SA through his various donations to the party. And so we must question, and the question really is, what does your money buy you? Is the more money you're giving to this party going to make things more favorable for you? And at the moment, we don't yet have a clear answer to that. But yes, we should be questioning the amounts that are actually also being donated to these parties.
Robyn, what do you also make of some of the parties that are not necessarily complying with the provisions of the Act? We understand that the Commission is now withholding quarterly disbursements to 3 political parties on accounts of non-compliance with the requirements of the Act. They haven't necessarily published or brought forward their financial statements, and I understand some of those parties involved include the African Independence Congress, the National Freedom Party, as well as the Congress of the People. Why do you think they would not be complying? I mean, surely they would know the repercussions of this, but it seems it's a lot more important to them to not, make these financial statements public as per the Act.
Absolutely. It is unclear. Look, the IEC has mentioned very clearly that there was a significantly high rate of non-compliance with the submission of audited financial statements to the IEC as required by the law. And so those 3 parties that you mentioned are in fact obviously represented parties. And so that is why they are having those funds being withheld from them. And the IEC also made it very clear that those other parties that also were not complying, they will also see other punitive measures being meted out against them in accordance of the law. I mean, it's really at this stage, if you're a represented political party, it means that you have some kind of money coming in. It means you should be complying. And it's unclear why they would be reluctant to do so. What I will say is that this is a step in the right direction, seeing that enforcement is in fact being done by the IEC in this way, because this is the only way that we can make this kind of law work. Yeah. If you don't do what's required of you, you must see the consequences. And this is an excellent way of showing that. So hopefully this is a deterrent for future parties, particularly the represented ones, to actually comply with what the Act is asking.
And just also my last question to you, I suppose, under the same breath, with regards to a strong message that's been sent here by the IEC. I know that in the past, when this Act was introduced, there were, mixed emotions and criticism that would party funders be willing to fund parties and donate money anymore, given that some of them want to be private, they don't want their personal or public funding information out there. But what message is it also sending, just in general, to political parties as well as funders, making reference, obviously, to this Act?
I think what the message is very clearly is take us seriously. So what My Vote Counts has been saying, and what other activists in the space have also been saying about this, is that nobody wants democracy to be underfunded. We want to have competitive political parties and representatives, but what we want is that they serve our needs, us as the voters, us as the public, and not your funder. And that is really the reason why we have this law. So if you as a donor are not wanting to donate because of this law, then the question you must ask yourself is why? Why do I not want to be known? Why is it a problem that so-and-so sees that I donate to this? What is actually happening? And for our political parties, the same question. Why are you fighting so hard to keep your donors in the dark? What is the issue that they can't be made public? So I think when we see things like the enforcement by the IEC, it shows the seriousness by which we take this law. So that you can't play with us.
All right.
And I think it is a strong message that you should be making clear where your money comes from.
Well, thank you so much, Robyn, for adding your voice to this conversation. Robyn Pasensie, who's the party funding researcher at My Vote Counts, applauding, of course, the IEC for not only implementing the act of not funding the political parties that have not disclosed their financial statements, but also, as we've seen there, different funds and amounts being donated to various political parties, begging the question as to what interests lie in those who are funding these political parties. That, of course, gives the voter, information and leeway to make an informed decision when voting for a political party.